Okay, listen. I uploaded that Big 3 Seinen video, right? The video did really well. It's sitting at like 146,000 views. Y'all did really well with that video. I appreciate it greatly. It's done a lot for my channel. It's brought a lot of new viewers to the channel. I'm very thankful for that. But I thought I made it abundantly obvious in the video that the reason I picked the Big 3 in that video that I did pick was because they represented the Seinen genre the most, and they were the most similar to each other, especially in the way their main characters were written and how the general plotline of the story was. People did not really take it that lightly, okay? So I kind of was expecting it to draw some controversy. I even did mention it in the video, but the one series that came up the most, which to be fair I expected it to come up the most, was Kingdom. I swear to you, the number of comments that I got on Kingdom, bro, I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's kind of weird when I personally love Kingdom. It's my third favorite manga, and I see people running through the comments like, yo, you're disrespecting Kingdom. The disrespect for Kingdom is crazy, bro. Vinland Saga should not be over Kingdom, bro. I guess that's fine. I kind of should have made it the Big 4, but again, the reason I didn't was because Kingdom's storyline didn't really fit the other 3, and if you really want to make the Big 3 of Seinen like we have the Big 3 of anime, you kind of gotta only pick 3 series, and I feel like Berserk, Vagabond, and Vinland Saga are the most similar compared to Berserk, Vagabond, and Kingdom. But hey, the video's done. It's over. Whatever. So in honor of that blunder of mine, let's talk about Kingdom and why I believe Kingdom to be one of the greatest seinen manga ever, one of the manga that you have to experience before you die. Because yes, this story is one of a kind, and yes, this story is something you need to experience before you leave this earth. My god, Kingdom is incredible. And in honor of the 1-year anniversary of me starting Kingdom, I think it only makes the most sense. Let's get into it. So the main topic of Kingdom is war. Kingdom is pretty much war if it was just a manga. It is the greatest war arc in manga because the entire story is a war. So yes, there have been a lot of stories that have war in it, that have war arcs, right? Some can complete them very well, some can complete them pretty well. Kingdom is just entirely war. Nothing really changes from that main subject. How can you make a story that's entirely based on war so interesting? If the entire subject of the story is war, you're gonna have to make each big battle very different and still keep the reader engaged in the story. Kingdom does that. It's 700 plus chapters, it is still ongoing. It's almost like it's one of those series you can blast through and just binge read until you catch up. It is so unique in every single battle with the different characters, the different generals, and the different strategies that are introduced in every single battle, and the stakes that are up for every single battle, not only with the main character side, but with the sides of the antagonists, who at times don't even really seem like the antagonists because of the parallels with the protagonist and the duality of the different characters. But all these things combined make for some of the most interesting and strategical and deeply analyzed fights that I have ever seen. And in each gigantic war, as you can imagine, there are many sub-fights, and those sub-fights are sort of like the 1v1s between the 2 big generals of each side. Bro, I kid you not, some of those fights are absolutely just incredible. I can't even think of another word to explain it because I say incredible for like every single manga I talk about and every single video I make. I know it gets kind of annoying. I can't really change it because that's the only way I can really describe it. If you have any more synonyms for incredible, drop them in the comments. I can name names, but I'm not going to because I don't really want to spoil. But let's just say the character Mobu, that man has some of the craziest fights in the whole story. Kanki, despite the fact that he's not actually fighting with his sword, has some of the coolest rivalries with some of the characters, and some of his adversaries are really cool too, but he just destroys them himself. It's really just an experience, man. The action, like, how do I even need to explain it? If you're gonna write a manga about war, which is almost entirely about fighting, you're gonna need to make some pretty damn good action, right? Like, you don't even gotta say it. Like Kingdom, they know what they're doing with their action. They know how to write good fights, they know how to write good characters, and how to parallel them together, how to bring them together in certain moments, who needs to die in the fight, how they die. All these things combined make for some of the best fights in all of manga, which rightfully so because the entire story is based off of the fighting. But if the entire story is based off of fighting, then what's so good about the story? Like, what's so enjoyable about the story itself if the entire story is fighting? You see, the story is based off historical events of the past. This is actually based off the Chinese Warring States era, which took place, I believe, 223 years BC. I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong with that estimation. It's around those times, those ancient times times before the current era, China was divided into 7 different kingdoms. I'm not going to name the 7 kingdoms. Actually, I think I can name them off the top of my head, but I'm not going to. 7 kingdoms are at each other's necks. Every single arc is a different kind of fight. You rarely get to see the same kingdoms fighting, except for the main kingdom. They're kind of like our protagonist kingdom, so to speak, right? But aside from that, every arc is sort of different in the opponents that we are faced with as the Qin Empire. As for the main purpose of the story, what I find to be super interesting about Kingdom is we have 2 very different protagonists that are basically like best friends because of certain events that happen in the beginning of the story. One of the main characters, who's like the main character, Shin, wants to become the greatest general, so his path is through the path of bloodshed and through fighting. Whereas you have another character, Sai, whose goal is to unify China, and he doesn't do any of the fighting really, right? And people who've read Kingdom, you know, you can correct me on that, but he doesn't really do any of the fighting. He's the king. His goal is to unify China, to unify the 7 kingdoms, which no one has ever done before. And obviously, based on Chinese historical events, Qin Shi Huang does unify China. You've already been spoiled the end of Kingdom, so I can't really spoil that for you, even though I just did. Now let's talk about the characters, because a lot of good stories are character-driven stories, and the characters are possibly more important than the story, because the characters sort of make the story. So we have 7 different kingdoms and we have hundreds of different generals. So I think you can safely assume that there are plenty of characters, and the characters are very diverse, not only in ethnicity because they're from different states, in the way they fight, in the reason they fight, and in who they really are as people. There's evil characters, there's good characters, and there's really strong characters on both sides. One thing they do kind of do sort of poorly is make the character designs look very similar to each other, but I don't think that's a very big issue, especially considering that when the battle is really going on, I don't think you're really focusing on the character designs. You're more so focusing on the goals of the characters, and again, what they do really good is intersecting the characters in different kinds of fights, in different kinds of conflicts, and facing them with different experiences which allow them to grow as characters. And the development of many characters, including our main characters, are incredible. Shin's development is amazing. Sai's development is amazing in a completely different way, because he is the king, he is a very young king, and the way he grows into that king role is an experience in itself, and we experience that as the viewer throughout the story. So the reason I kind of wanted to include it inside the Big 3 Seinen video, and why I would have called it the Big 4, was because if you really think about it, it sort of incorporates themes from all 3 of the Big Seinen that I mentioned in the video. It has the historical theme from Vinland Saga, both are based off real events, and they're quite literally real life stories. Vagabond's philosophy is pretty much implemented into Kingdom as well. Kingdom has a lot of great philosophy, which kind of makes sense because China was incredibly popular for its philosophy around the same time, and the dark elements that Berserk has take place in Kingdom as well. Now I will say it doesn't really have the dark fantasy type feel that Berserk has, but it does have a lot of dark elements, and that kind of makes sense because it is a seinen story. They also do have a character swinging around a pretty massive sword. Not like Guts, because let's be honest, who's gonna be like Guts? But Shin's got some pretty cool weapons, I'm not gonna lie. What's cool is even though we know that there is an end goal, that we know where the story ends, because they do show us a glimpse of the end of story situation in the first chapter, and we know based off historical events what's really going to happen. Despite all of that, Kingdom still is so mysterious, so suspenseful, so engaging, and so compelling in so many different ways. That is how you know your story is good. If you get spoiled, you're still super engaged in the story. Everything is written down in history, and yet still through this fictional display of all the characters and all the events that took place, the realistic feel to the fights and to the characters and to the setting makes Kingdom one of the most enjoyable manga out there. The art, I don't even think I need to talk about the art, just flash a few spreads on the screen. Kingdom's art is up there with some of the best. The way it portrays the fights, man, the gruesome way they show the art and like the blades and everything, it's so cool. It is truly magnificent. And the art development, mind you, the art development as well is crazy. From chapter 1 to chapter, I don't know, 729 I think we're on right now. Wow. I mean, the art development, I mean, just... Now, there are 2 arcs in my opinion that stand out from all the others in Kingdom, and that is the Coalition arc and the West Sao Invasion arc. These are 2 arcs that kind of hold the story in place for me. Every other arc is really good too, but these 2 are like the biggest battles between the most prevalent of these 7 kingdoms, as well as in one of the cases the cast super diverse, the story based off realistic events and still super compelling, the artwork some of the best ever, and just the emotion that this story brings out of you. sadness, excitement, every kind of emotion you can think, it brings it out of you. The world building is based off real life China, but still, the world building really realistic, and the portrayal of the realistic world is amazing. I know I should have made it the big 4. In hindsight, it was kind of a mistake, but I hope you do understand now that I love Kingdom probably just as much as you, maybe even more. But yeah, Kingdom, masterpiece. Might have to make more videos on it. That's it for now though. Peace.